Westernspring Television. Ours it is.
Nigerian Labour Congress kicks against adjustment of petrol prices by NNPC as pump price rises to over 500 naira per litre. Court sentences hotel receptionist to 2 years imprisonment in connection with murder of OAU master student Timothy Adegoke. In Kaduna State, bandits abduct 2 All Progressives Congress women leaders in Benin Gwari local government area. And on the foreign scene, Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa sets 23rd of August 2023 for general election. Good evening. This is News at 7 on Westernspring Television. My name is Femi Olanikwekun. The pump price of premium motor spirits, popularly called petrol, rose to over 500 naira per litre across Nigeria today. This comes 2 days after President Bola Tinubu in his inaugural address said petrol subsidy would be removed by his administration, a comment that caused racketeering and panic buying in the supply chain of the product. In a statement today, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited said it had adjusted the price of petrol across its retail outlets. NNPC's spokesperson, Garuba Din Mohammed, said the adjustment is in line with market realities. He said pump prices at NNPC's retail outlets will now begin to vary to match market trends. The oil company said it regrets any inconvenience the development may cause Nigerians. According to a document reportedly emanated from the NNPC, the price of petrol was fixed at between 488 naira and 555 naira per litre, depending on the location of purchase. In the meantime, the Nigerian Labour Congress NLC has condemned the adjustment of pump prices by the Nigerian National Petrol Company Limited, barely 48 hours after President Bola Tinubu announced an end to the subsidy era during his inaugural speech at Eagle Square, Abuja on Monday. NNPC confirmed the hike in the pump price of petrol. Describing the development as unfortunate, NLC President Joe Ajero said the NNPC's action was coming on the heels of an ongoing meeting with stakeholders in the oil and gas sector to manage the unilateral but unfortunate announcement by the president. In a statement, Mr. Ajero called on the federal government to immediately instruct the NNPC to withdraw its vexatious pricing template to allow free flow of discussions by the parties. He said through the act, President Tinubu has put a gun to the head of the Nigerian people. Meanwhile, Nigerians have called on the federal government to review downwards the new pump price of petrol following today's announcement by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. Olayinka Ali was at the NNPC mega station in Osogbo and our reports.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, has jacked up pump prices of petrol PMS by over 200%, bringing the price of fuel to between 488 naira and 557 naira per litre, as speculated in an online publication. This is a new pricing template purportedly sent to marketers by the NNPC management to oil marketers late Tuesday night, and it was directed at the new price adjustments come into effect from today. Report says NNPC stakeholders had a meeting on Wednesday morning and a resolution by the management approved an upward review of the NNPC PMS pump price table for mega standard list stations, instructing all marketers to adjust retail prices for the petroleum products across states. It was gathered that in the new price template, Lagos State has a list price of 488 naira per litre, while Maiduguri and Damaturu have the highest pump prices of 557 577 naira per litre. On a visit to the NNPC mega station at Ring Road, Oshogbo, the Osun State capital, there was no long queue, as it looks like motorists have accepted their fate by buying at 500 naira per litre. Idowu Odewale, who bought for 500 naira, expressed his displeasure and wishes the federal government would regulate the price.
Actually, we bought the fare 500 naira per litre. This is not done. You understand? How can we cope? We bought fare per litre 500 naira. Baba Tinubu, you need to re-strategize.
Titilayo Akonde and Feishayo Ayeni, in the separate interviews, both wished the hike in fuel price was fake news. But alas, reality dawned on them when they got to the fuel station.
In fact, I heard in my office that they've increased the price to 500. I was surprised but I had no choice because I don't have fuel in my car. So that's why I'm just buying the little so that it will just keep me going. But immediately I bought it now, I've made up my mind that for the rest of the week, I won't be taking my car out. I'll just use this one to warm it and keep it at home until maybe when things change.
Honestly, this is killing. 500 naira per litre. That means if I'm to get my car tank filled up, I'm going to spend 35,000 naira. It's a very serious matter. With other things to attend to as far as the country is concerned, this is killing.
It looks as if Wole Olawale is not disturbed about the increase in price of PMS. As he said, everyone would get used to the new price.
Anyway, it's a good thing. They removed the subsidy, but I think we get used to it.
As the NNPC confirmed the adjustments in pump prices of premium motor spirits, known better as petrol, across the country, many Nigerians hope the prices would be readjusted as they consider it outrageous. Olayinka Ali, Westernspring Television News.
President Bola Tinubu today met with the chairperson of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Abdurrashid Bawa, at the presidential villa in Abuja. The meeting came barely 24 hours after President Tinubu ordered the Department of State Services, DSS, to vacate the Ikoyi office of the Anti-Graft Commission. Mr. Bawa, who arrived at the villa a few minutes past 2 p.m., was ushered into the president's office complex. Although the purpose of the meeting was not immediately known, reports said it might be informed by the reported fracas between the operatives of the EFCC and the personnel of the DSS. President Tinubu also met with the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mele Kyari. This comes amidst the resurgence of petrol scarcity across the country, which followed the President's declaration in his inaugural speech that fuel subsidy is gone. To legal matters, the Osun State High Court sitting in Oshogbo has sentenced Adeshola Adedeji, the receptionist that received the late master's student of the Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU, Timothy Adegoke, when he lodged in the Hilton Hotel Ile-Ife on November 6, 2021, to 2 years imprisonment for altering the receipt issued to the deceased. Adeshola's sentence was pronounced at the sitting of the court today by the Osun State Chief Judge Adepele Ojo. She was said to have fabricated another receipt for the purpose of concealing traces of Adegoke's stay at the hotel. Justice Ojo had yesterday found Adeshola guilty of doctoring the hotel receipt issued to the deceased, fabricating another and concealing evidence. The judge further said the 2 years should start from the first day she was detained since the commencement of the matter. Yesterday, the court sentenced the founder of the Hilton Hotel Ile-Ife, Ramon Adedoyin, and 2 staff of the hotel to death by hanging for conspiracy to murder and murder of the OAU master's student. The Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal has adjourned the case of the Labour Party and its presidential candidate in the last election, Peter Obi, till tomorrow. Mr. Obi and the LP filed a petition challenging the victory of Bola Tinubu in the February 25th presidential election. At the court session today, the petitioners, Counsel Awa Kalu, informed the 5-member panel headed by Haruna Samani that due to an unexpected development, it would be seeking for an adjournment until tomorrow. A senior advocate of Nigeria further disclosed that 2 of the legal team members took ill. Lawyers to the respondents did not oppose the request for an adjournment. However, chairperson of the panel reminded the petitioners' legal team that they were written into their allotted time. Subsequently, the suit was adjourned till tomorrow for further hearing.
Okay, I told them we have unexpected developments. Unexpected developments at our secretariat. That is where we take off from. And related to illness. And I can't give you the full details of the illness. That is significant enough for me to ask for an adjournment. You understand what I mean?
Well, moving on now, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, has dismissed 5 of its personnel, including a deputy director, for various offences. A statement by NAPTIP spokesman Vincent Adekoye said the offences range from corruption, demanding and receiving bribes from suspects and relatives, leaking confidential information to suspects that endangered the lives of colleagues, to absence without official leave. He said the offences are contrary to provisions of the public service rules and other extant laws and regulations. Mr. Adekoye revealed that 2 other officers were demoted by 2 ranks for soliciting for bribe from a suspect of human trafficking, while 1 officer was demoted by 1 rank for negligence of duty. And while a federal high court sitting in Sokoto has convicted a law enforcement officer on a 2-count charge of trafficking and sentenced him to 5 years in prison on each count. Elsewhere, Abia State Governor Alex Oti has directed immediate suspension of all kinds of transport levies payable to the state government and imposed on tricycles, buses and taxis and other commercial vehicles plying Abia roads. According to a statement by the governor's media aide, Ferdinand Ekeoma, this is in line with the governor's campaign promise to sanitize methods of revenue collection in the state and stop all kinds of extortion, intimidation and harassment of motorists. He said the suspension takes immediate effect and will remain until government reviews the levies and makes public its arrangement for the smooth, organized and transparent collection of such transport levies. The government says it believes the present method is archaic and very harmful to the lives of the people and economic well-being of the state, and thus should not be allowed to continue. To politics now, Sly Ezeokenwa has emerged the new national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA. His emergence was announced today at the APGA National Convention in Awka, the Anambra State capital. Mr. Ezeokenwa was sworn in alongside the newly elected national officers of APGA and the presence of Anambra State Governor Chukwuma Soludo. He takes over from Victor Oye.
Article 19.6 of the Application 2019, these offices are contested and their election shall be by voice vote. Those in favor of returning these eminent individuals as National Working Committee members of APGA say yay. Those against say nay. Yes, all right, the ayes have it.
According to the legislature, 2 senators of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Senators Matthew Goide and Ayo Akinyelure, have resigned their membership of the party. The notice of the resignations was contained in 2 separate letters addressed to the Senate President Ahmed Lawan and read during today's plenary session. Senator Ohoyide represents Edo South Senatorial District in the Red Chamber, while Senator Akinyelure represents Ondo Central Senatorial District. In his letter, Senator Ohoyide said his decision to resign was because of the inability of the PDP to reconcile the power struggle in the party. On his part, Senator Akinyelure said his decision is significant because the 9th Assembly is coming to an end. The lawmakers are yet to announce the political parties they intend to join. In the meantime, the Senate has passed for second reading a bill seeking to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women and persons with disabilities. In December 2021, Senator representing Ekiti South Biodun Olujimi was forced to withdraw the legislation after some of her colleagues raised social, cultural, and Islamic concerns. It was agreed then that the concerns raised should be taken out so that it could be considered and passed. Leading a debate on the legislation today, Senator Olujimi said it will create a conducive atmosphere for women and persons with disabilities. Contributing to the debate, Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate, Sabi Abdullahi, said Senator Olujimi failed to highlight the areas that have been changed in the legislation. Also, Senator representing Taraba Central, Yusuf, said the title of the bill should reflect equity and not equality. After that was done, the bill was passed for second reading after Deputy Senate President Ovie Omagege put it to a vote.
Discrimination against women, limiting their entry and growth in most formal spheres of works. The bill, therefore, seeks to avail equal opportunities of career choices, growth and promotion, job security, as well as equal treatment in work value, especially as relates to women's rights to paid maternity leave. The bill, when enacted, will assist in dislodging some of the barriers to women's equal access to all forms of financial credit, family benefits, and other aspects of cultural life. The bill will also consolidate government and community protection and zero tolerance for violence in any circumstance, while promoting peace and harmony in homes where all its members are guaranteed equal access and treatment against discrimination, particularly for the girl child accessing education, women participating and contributing to governance and public life, uninhibited by customary laws, all forms of sexual and gender-based violations as they seek to access education and decent life conditions. Mr. President, distinguished senators, you will find this bill beneficial for the clear and constructive ways the bill seeks to address several forms of issues bedeviling men and women in their constituencies, in issues of land ownership, inheritance, education, employment, and rising tide of sexual and gender-based violence in private and public spaces of institutions of learning. The bill further consolidates Senate's courageous passage.
You're watching News at 7 on Westernspring Television. Still to come, Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa set 23rd of August 2023 for general election. We'll bring you more on this story when we return.
The history of guns is traced to China. The Chinese had developed a technology civilization that produced devices identified as guns at about 1000 AD. By the end of the 13th century, the devices had become true guns and described as metal barrel firearms that fired single projectiles which occluded the barrel. When did gun become an instrument of war? The first battles to be decided by firearms were between French and Spanish soldiers. The early 16th century warfare included Magnano in 1515, Bicocca in 1522, and Pavia in 1525. The wars were fought in Italy. The gun is a weapon of destruction and death, but humanity sees it as a potent instrument of family destruction. People with guns feel safer even if they don't display it. Westernspring Television identifies history of guns as a watershed event in history. Now Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Westernspring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Westernspring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history.
Welcome back, and this is still news at 7 on Westernspring Television. A reminder of our headlines. Nigeria and Labour Congress kicks against adjustment of petrol prices by NNPC as pump price rises to over 500 naira per litre. Court sentences hotel receptionist to 2 years imprisonment in connection with the murder of OAU master student Timothy Adegoke. In Kaduna State, bandits abducted two All Progressives Congress women leaders in Benin Gwari local government area. And on the foreign scene, Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa sets August 23rd, 2023 for general election. Nigerians across the country have begun placing demands on the new administration of President Bola Tinubu as he fully begins the business of governance. President Tinubu was sworn in on Monday will have the hopes and expectations of an estimated 200 million Nigerians to manage. Emmanuel Ujiadigele was on the streets of Osogbo, the State capital, and has the report.
It's been 2 days after President Bola Tinubu took his oath of office as the occupant of Nigeria's highest political office. As is common to new administrations, there is a raft of expectations from Nigerians. One of such Nigerians is Ms. Ngozi Adima.
Okay, let's say 2 days after the inauguration, it's been terrible. Transportation is high, fuel is scarce, things are very much expensive. So we're hoping for him to come to Nigeria, like he should hear the cry of Nigeria, not just sit down there and look at us, because Nigerians are not happy to start with. Like me now, I'm not happy. I won't say, look at my hair, so unkept, things are expensive. I'm coming from the market, see what I got for 3,000. Is you know, I'm not happy anyway.
It's not just on the streets that people have opinions or expectations of the new administration of former Lagos Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Here at the popular Igbono market in Osogbo, the Osun State capital, there are traders like Mrs. Adeoye who also have their own expectations from the Tinubu administration. She speaks to us in a native Yoruba language. Ekasoma.
Ekasan lọ́dọ̀ àwa tí à ń tajà. Ara lérò pé tí bó ṣe débẹ̀ yìí tí ó bá kọ́ bá fojú wo àwọn ọjà yẹn bó ṣe wọ́n tí wọ́n bá lè bá wa rí nǹkan kan ṣe sí ọ̀nà tí oníkálukú fi lè máa rí ọjà rà lọ́nà tó rọrùn tí oníkálukú ó lè lọ láti lọ ibi tó bá fẹ́ láti lọ rajà bóyá bó ṣe náà ti bọ́dà tán ṣí bọ́dà yẹn tí oníkálukú ẹni tí ò lówó pọ̀ lọ́wọ́ tó bá rí change díẹ̀ tó lọ sórí nǹkan tó ṣe pẹ́pẹ́pẹ́ tó rà.
Faith Ayodeji is a part of Nigeria's teeming youth population. His expectations are hinged on the improvement of the conditions of living for all.
I would expect him to improve on our employment. So because the employment rate that I saw online 2 or 3 days ago was very bad in terms of a country that has a lot of that has a lot of resources that we can use to generate income. And also I think he should try and improve on our tech space. So I'm talking about employment and our tech space and also security as well, because the security of the country is so bad.
Similarly, Oluwasegun Olaonipekun believes the Tinubu government will outperform the outgone Buhari administration. He wants decisive actions to tackle rising inflation.
Foodstuff should just come down. Me, I just finished my services, so I know how much I spent on buying food. So if food can can come down a bit, I think it will really help people.
As it is across Nigeria, so it is in Osun State. The nascent government of President Bola Tinubu will be scrutinized vis-a-vis his campaign promises, which already has a lot of expectations riding on it. From here on out, the Tinubu administration has its work cut out for it. Emmanuel Ujadigele, Westernspring Television News.
Other security now. Gunmen suspected to be cultists invaded 2 communities in Ahoda East and Ahoda West local government areas of Rivers State today, killing 6 persons. It was gathered that the rampaging cultists first killed 1 person in Abaripo community, Ahoda East, while 5 persons were killed in Odioreke, Obie community, Ahoda West. These came barely 48 hours after 4 persons were killed in a renewed cult clash in Emoha in Rivers State. Public Relations Officer of ACO Youth Congress, Ahoda East Local Government Area, Ekeakita Chinam, said the gunmen rode in motorcycles or searching for their targets. Police spokesperson in the state, Grace Iringe Koko, said the investigation was ongoing to apprehend the suspect. And in Kaduna State, bandits have abducted 2 women leaders of the All Progressives Congress APC and some others along the Manini Flashpoint in the Gweri local government area of the state. The incident happened when the women leaders, Lami Awarware and her assistant, Haulatu Aliyu, attended the inauguration of the state governor, Ubasani. The chairman, Gweri Emirates Progressive Union, Ishak Kasai, said apart from the women, scores of other victims were kidnapped by the suspect. The abductors, according to the chairman, are yet to contact the families of the victims or any person in the area. On the foreign scene, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has set the 23rd of August 2023 as a date for the country's general election, including presidential and parliamentary polls. Tensions have been rising ahead of the vote, with the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change calling for an audit into the voters' register, citing missing names, including some of its officials, and voters being moved several kilometers away from their wards of residence. The electoral body has said the ongoing voters' registration and inspection exercise will resolve some of these anomalies. Mr. Mnangagwa's ZANU-PF party, which has been in power since independence in 1980, will face off against the CCC, led by Nelson Chamisa, a 45-year-old lawyer and pastor, or be Mr. Mnangagwa's opponent for a second time. In Europe, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen today delivered a speech to Parliament, partly written using artificial intelligence tool ChatGPT, to highlight the revolutionary aspects and risks of AI. The head of the Danish government was giving a traditional speech as Parliament gets ready to close for the summer. Partway into her speech, legislators, Ms. Frederiksen suddenly said parts of it were written by ChatGPT. ChatGPT burst into the spotlight late last year, demonstrating an ability to generate essays, poems, and conversations from briefest of prompts. The program's wild success sparked a gold rush with billions of dollars of investment into the field. But critics and insiders have raised the alarm. The subject is on the agenda of a high-level meeting on trade between the United States and the European Union in Luleå, Sweden. United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi has urged Ukraine and Russia to adhere to concrete principles to prevent nuclear catastrophe at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Mr. Grossi, who was speaking to the United Nations Security Council, said the nuclear safety and security situation at Zaporizhzhia power plant continues to be extremely fragile and dangerous. Urged both sides to respect 5 principles to safeguard the power plant, suggesting it had not secured their agreement on protecting the facility. Mr. Grossi said the plant should not be used as a base for heavy weapons, such as multiple rocket launchers, artillery systems and munitions and tanks, or for military personnel that could be used for an attack from the plant.
We are fortunate that a nuclear accident has not yet happened. As I said at the IAEA Board of Governors last March, we are rolling a dice. And if this continues, then one day our luck will run out. So we must all do everything in our power to minimize the chance that it does. As the Council knows, since returning from my first of 2 missions to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant last September, I have been urging all parties to protect the nuclear safety and security of the plant. This has involved numerous meetings, intensive consultations and exchanges, including at the highest levels in Ukraine and...
In the meantime, NATO peacekeeping troops in Kosovo have placed metal fences and barbed wire barriers in a northern town following clashes that have seen dozens of international soldiers and protesters injured. The barriers were erected after hundreds of ethnic Serbs started gathering in front of the city hall of Zvecan. On Monday, with about 4,000 soldiers in the country, NATO sent 700 additional troops to northern Kosovo to help curb the violent protest. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told reporters in Oslo that 700 more troops have been deployed from the Operational Reserve Force for Western Balkans to put an additional battalion of reserve forces on high alertness. Violence initially broke out in the north of the country over the weekend after ethnic Albanian mayors were installed in Serbian-dominated areas in a vote overwhelmingly boycotted by Serbs.
KFOR, the NATO forces, will take all necessary actions to maintain a safe and secure environment for all citizens in Kosovo. And we will continue to act impartially in line with our United Nations mandate. We have decided to deploy 700 more troops from the Operational Reserve Force for Western Balkans and to put an additional battalion of reserve forces on higher readiness so they can also be deployed if needed. These are prudent steps to ensure that KFOR has the forces and capabilities it needs to fulfill its mandate.
But turning to Asia now, China has blamed the United States' provocation for an incident in which a Chinese plane crossed the front of an American surveillance aircraft over the South China Sea. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said the United States' long-term and frequent sending of ships and planes to conduct close surveillance on China seriously harms China's national sovereignty and security. She noted that the provocative, dangerous activity was the cause of the security issues on the seas, maintaining that China will continue to take all necessary steps to resolutely protect its own sovereignty and security. The U.S. military yesterday said Chinese fighters pilot performed an unnecessarily aggressive maneuver near an American surveillance aircraft operating over the South China Sea last week. Still ahead, Senate asks its committee to work on former President Muhammadu Buhari's request for issuance of promissory notes to settle judgment debts. We have more on these and other business stories after this break. Please just stay with us.
Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Westernspring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Westernspring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in the multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Westernspring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Back and now to business. The Senate has asked its Committee on Foreign Loans to work on former President Muhammadu Buhari's request for the issuance of promissory notes to settle judgment debts. The request was up for consideration during today's plenary session However, Senator George Sakibo raised a point of order, arguing that the 9th Senate cannot pass the request as it is winding down and does not have enough time to do a thorough analysis of the request. He proposed that the incoming 10th Senate should handle the matter, but Deputy Senate President Ovioma Agege, who presided over the plenary, ruled that the Foreign Loans Committee should work on the request and return with a report in 1 week. The judgment debts incurred by federal ministries, departments, and agencies are $566.7 million, £98.52 million, and £226.2 billion. Philippine lawmakers today approved the creation of an $8.9 billion sovereign wealth fund to boost growth and cut poverty, but critics insisted it was a scam and should be scrapped. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had called for a swift passage of the bill to enable the debt-laden government to earn extra funds to finance infrastructure projects. The national government will be the biggest contributor to the fund, drawing seed funds from the central bank, gaming revenue, and 2 government-owned banks. Private financial institutions and corporations will also be allowed to invest. House of Representatives Deputy Speaker Aurelio Gonzalez declared the Senate's version of the bill approved during a session. It will be sent to Mr. Marcos to be signed into law. The original proposal was for a $4.9 billion fund that will be partly bankrolled by state-run pensions for government and private sector workers, sparking public fears that retirement savings could be put at risk. The final version of the bill said pension funds would not have to contribute. I apologize for that audio quality. In the United States, the House of Representatives is due to vote today on a bill to lift the government's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. Republicans controlled the House by a narrow 222 to 213 majority, but a bipartisan deal will need support from both Speaker Kevin McCarthy's Republicans and President Joe Biden's Democrats to pass, as members of both parties object to significant parts of the bill.
After weeks of talks and warnings of potential economic disaster, the White House and congressional leaders in the United States have reached a deal to increase the debt ceiling, one that lawmakers now must turn into law before the U.S. defaults on its obligations. Legislation brokered by President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to lift the $31.4 trillion U.S. debt ceiling and achieve new federal spending cuts passed an important hurdle late on Tuesday, advancing to the full House of Representatives for debate and an expected vote on passage on Wednesday.
Look, we're not negotiating the debt ceiling. Here's the deal. They passed the debt ceiling, and they said they'd only do it on condition that it have all these cuts in it. I said, I'm not going to do that. You pass the debt ceiling, period. I'll negotiate with you on the cuts. What you say, what's going to happen, what the budget's going to look like. That's what we are negotiating in order to get to them deciding that they're going to go along with a new debt ceiling, meaning that it's not attached. It's something totally different attached than was attached before. But you want to try to make it look like I made some compromise in the debt ceiling, and I didn't. I made a compromise on the budget.
The House Rules Committee voted 7-6 to approve the rules allowing debate by the full chamber. The committee Republicans, Representatives Chip Roy and Ralph Norman, bucked their leadership by opposing the bill.
My colleagues, be very clear. Not one Republican should vote for this deal. It is a bad deal. No one sent us here to borrow an additional $4 trillion to get absolutely nothing in return. But at best, if I'm being really generous, a spending freeze for a couple of years. That's it. That's about what you get. And frankly, you're going to make things worse. And my Democratic colleagues know it. That's why they're supporting it. That's why they're going around gleeful. Look, there's a reason our Democrat colleagues support this. There's a reason that Mitt Romney supports this. There's a reason that Bill Kristol supports this. It's all the same stuff. There's a reason that our conservative allies are opposing it roundly. The Club for Growth, scoring against it. The Heritage Foundation, scoring against it. Freedom Works, scoring against it. Ron DeSantis, publicly opposed. President Trump said he thought we should default rather than pursue this kind of lunacy. At the end of the day, the only person that would default in this town is Joe Biden, unless Republicans default on the American dream by voting for this bad bill. That is why this group will oppose it. We will continue to fight it today, tomorrow, and no matter what happens, there's going to be a reckoning about what just occurred unless we stop this bill by tomorrow.
And now, all of a sudden, at the last minute, it's an insult to get a 100-page bill and be asked to decide on it on the spot. I won't buy a microwave unless I get it in writing.
The crisis and its resolution have been months in the making. They trace back to the November 2022 midterm elections, which saw Republicans win a narrow majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, depriving President Joe Biden's Democratic Party of the ability to pass legislation on its own. House passage would send the bill to the Senate. The measure needs congressional approval before June 5, when the Treasury Department could run out of funds to pay its debts for the first time in U.S. history. If the Treasury Department cannot cover all its payments, or if it was forced to prioritize payments that could trigger economic chaos in the U.S. and global economies. Biden and McCarthy have predicted they will get enough votes to pass the 99-page bill into law before the June 5 deadline. Nevertheless, some of the House's most conservative Republicans who sought far deeper spending reductions were not persuaded, and it was unclear how many Democrats McCarthy will need to win Wednesday's anticipated vote on passage. All four Democrats on the Rules Committee voted against the bill, as they typically do on Republican-backed legislation. It was unclear whether that might influence other Democrats to do the same on Wednesday, even as Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said his party would provide the support McCarthy needs. Temi Chakbeya Jijalal, Westernspring Television News.
The unemployment rate in the Republic of Ireland fell to a record low of 3.8% in May. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the rate peaked in March 2021 at 7.7%. Ireland's economy has recovered strongly since pandemic restrictions were removed. Northern Ireland's labour market has also performed well since the pandemic, with an unemployment rate of 2.5%, which is just above the record low. But now to sports. Nigeria forward Victor Boniface has been nominated for Belgian Pro League Player of the Season award. Boniface and his Union Saint-Gilloise teammate Dedi Teuma are nominated along with Jens Mike Trezop. The 22-year-old has registered 9 goals and provided 8 assists in 36 appearances for Union Saint-Gilloise this season. The striker will be looking to become the first Nigerian to win the award after Paul Onuachu in the 2020-2021 season. And Barcelona's Ousmane Dembele and RB Leipzig forward Christopher Nkunku are amongst the players recalled to the French squad named today by coach Didier Deschamps ahead of 2 Euro 2024 qualifiers in June. Fitness problems meant both players missed France's opening qualifying matches in March, but they beat the Netherlands 4-0 at home and won 1-0 away to the Republic of Ireland. Top of their group, they now go into a match against Gibraltar in Faro, Portugal, on June 16th, and a home clash with Greece 3 days later. Chelsea centre-back Wesley Fofana is also in the squad and will hope to make his full France debut after withdrawing from the match list due to injury. Real Madrid left-back Ferland Mendy was also handed a first call-up since before the World Cup, while injured Arsenal defender William Saliba is amongst the notable absentees. Euro 2022 top scorer Beth Mead is not included in England's Women's World Cup squad, having not fully recovered from an anterior cruciate ligament injury. The Arsenal forward has not played since November and was a major doubt. Tottenham striker Beth England, who has not been involved since last summer, is included, having scored 12 goals in the past 12 Women's Super League games this season. England manager Serena Wigman said it was risky to try to get Mead to the World Cup.
So positive, and she's going really well. But we said the time schedule she had, we would have taken so many risks to try and get her to the World Cup, and also she had a personal situation too. So that all added that very shortly or very early we said, well, we're not going to take that risk. I'm not willing to take that risk to push her too much, and then she gets injured again, because we also have to take care of players and do what's smart and not do what's a little bit naive.
Well, to tennis now. Fifth seed Stefanos Tsitsipas reached the French Open third round with a straight set victory over Spain's Roberto Cabales Baena. The Greek runner-up at Roland Garros in 2021 won 6-3, 7-6, 6-2. Tsitsipas next plays Argentine Diego Schwartzman of Portugal's Nuno Borges, both of whom are unseeded.
I am very much in when it comes to breaking records. I get excited when I see personal records being kind of set and broken. Of course, it's a great satisfaction to be seeing those stats, because there's so much work behind it, and sometimes it's difficult to grasp the fact that it all happened so quickly. I just wish to keep on going. I wish to be healthy and to be fighting for more titles and breaking personal records, but also records that haven't been set before in tennis. Like that surf thing that happened in Madrid was quite cool, actually. I never thought about it. It just happened, and I wish to be kind of adding a few things like this too.
Meanwhile, in the female category, home favorite Caroline Garcia became the highest-ranked women's player to exit the French Open so far, with a second-round loss to Anna Blinkova. Fifth seed Garcia saved 8 match points before succumbing to a 4-6, 6-3, 7-5 defeat by the Russian. It came after former champion Jelena Ostapenko suffered a shock defeat by tournament debutant Peyton Stearns. But second seed Arina Sabalenka avoided a scare with a straight set win over qualifier Arina Shimanovic. Well, that's all at this hour, but before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. The Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, has condemned the adjustment of pump prices by the Nigerian National Petrol Company Limited, as the price of petrol rose to over 500 naira per litre across the country today. The Osun State High Court sitting in Osogbo has sentenced Adeshola Adedeji, the receptionist that received the late master student of the Obafemi Awolowo University, OAU, Timothy Adegoke, when he lodged in the hotel in Ile-Ife on November 6, 2021, to 2 years imprisonment for altering the receipt issued to the deceased. In Kaduna State, bandits have abducted 2 women leaders of the All Progressives Congress APC and some others along the Manini flashpoint in the Benin-Ngwari local government area of the state. And on the foreign scene, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has set the 23rd of August 2023 as a date for the country's general election, including presidential and parliamentary polls. Please do follow us on all of our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Westernspring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Westernspring Television. My name is Femi Olanipeku. Good night.